Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for a Yohnee Moode message. I am Yohnee Moode, and let's get right to it. Today's video is about understanding the Lord's Supper. And by the way, I'm outside today. I'm not typically an outside person, but it's not cold, and it's not raining, and the lighting is good, so I decided to come outside. All right, so understanding the Lord's Supper, and I've got notes with me too, so I can make sure that the information is accurate. So if you're wondering why I'm looking down, that is why. All right, so the first point about understanding the Lord's Supper is that the purpose is to commemorate the death of Christ, and he basically asks us to do this. He says that as often as we do it, do this in remembrance of him. And the synoptic gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each book portrays it the same story, but focuses on different aspects of the story. And I think it's in Mark where you actually hear him say, either Mark or Luke. I will put it on the screen, whether it's Mark or Luke. But anyway, he actually says, as often as you do this in remembrance of me. Okay? So the Lord's Supper is not something that we make up. It's something that that Jesus actually asked us to do. He did it with the disciples. And so he says, as often as we get together, as often as we decide to do it in remembrance of him. Okay? All right, number 2, it uses tangible items to represent spiritual things. And what I mean by that is it uses bread and wine, or crackers and grape juice, as it's done in some churches. Those tangible items represent not the actual, we're not eating his flesh and literally drinking his blood. It's symbolic of our decision to be a part of him, to be a part of what he did on the cross. It's us saying that we're all in. You know, we're eating his flesh and we're drinking his blood. They're symbolic items that represent the gravity of the decision that we've made to follow him. Okay? Number 3, it's a personal remembrance of his death. I remember a lot of times in church, the older women used to say, you can't tell it like I can tell it, what the Lord has done for me. Well, that's kind of what this third point means. It's a personal remembrance. It's not you necessarily telling a universal story of what he's done, although what he did was universal, but it's about you personally reflecting on what he did for you, what his deed did for you personally, what it has brought you out of, and how it has transformed you on a personal level. Okay? Number 4, it is not to be taken lightly. Yeah. Paul wrote what the New Testament calls epistles, which are letters to churches. And in these letters, he's basically giving them instructions on how to behave in certain situations, how to conduct church business, but more than that, how to make sure that they respect the words of Jesus and respect and accurately represent the legacy that Jesus left behind. And so in his letters, one of the instructions that he's given to the church in Corinthians, the church at Corinth, had to do with the Lord's Supper and how they were administering it and how they were approaching it. And one of the things he talked to them about was them taking it lightly, them taking it for a joke, them using it as an opportunity to come together and socialize, for them to get together and say, you know what, let's have the Lord's Supper. And by the way, I'm hungry, so make sure you got plenty of that bread and plenty of that wine, It became something that was not taken seriously by them. They didn't reverence it. And so in Corinthians, the 11th chapter, Paul is telling them, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're not looking at this in the right way, and it's dangerous that you're taking it lightly. Things are happening to you. A lot of, some of you are getting sick because you're taking this lightly. And so if you go on over to 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, and check that out, the things that he was saying. But basically, number 4 is the Lord's Supper is not to be taken lightly. Okay? And then last we have, it requires self-examination. Again, that's in Corinthians as well. And it kind of ties in with number 3 and 4, sort of. It's about a personal examination, and it's not to be taken lightly. Number 5 deviates just a little bit in that it says it requires self-examination, not so much as it relates to what the blood and the body of Christ did for you, but just a self-examination of how you personally are approaching what he's done, how you are personally discerning what he did. Do you really understand what his shed blood represented for you? Do you really understand the call that his death put on us? The call to kingdom citizenship, things like, are we walking in love with our friends and family and strangers? Are we loving people? Let's see, are we trying to live according to what Jesus has asked us to? Are we taking the word lightly? Are we discerning properly what it is God has asked us to do? Have we truly discerned what it means to be a kingdom citizen, and what it means to go forth and teach all nations? All of that as it relates to basically your role in the kingdom, self-examining your motives and your ideals. Do your beliefs line up with, sorry, the camera's shaking, my arm is itching. Do your ideals line up with that of Jesus's? You know what I mean? Are you personally being transformed by the renewing of your mind, or do you still have a carnal mindset, and are you okay with that? You know what I mean? That kind of self-examination. All right? Yay! All done with that. It feels so good out here. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. Once again, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them below. Any questions, please feel free to ask them. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so below. Turn on notifications so I can let you know what's coming up next. And until next time, I pray that you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.